Hey, Pittsburgh. I don't know about you, but my perfect summer night includes a little art, a little music, and maybe browsing some cute vintage goodies. So I will be checking out the gallery crawl in the Cultural District. It's on Saturday, July 26th from 5:30 to 9 p.m., and it's all totally free. You can swing by new exhibitions at a couple art galleries and shop for gently used clothes and decor at a midsummer market in the backyard at 8th and Penn. There'll be food, there'll be drinks, there'll be live DJs, and if you're up for it, there's even an after party at Wood Street Galleries where Detour will be dropping a new LP. You can find out more about the crawl and snag a ticket to the after party at trustarts.org/crawl. Hey, CityCast listeners, do you love biking around Pittsburgh? The hills, the tight curves, seeing the city from a more intimate point of view? Well, do you like doing it with thousands of other cyclists all following cute, multicolored signage all over the burg? Then you should sign up for UPMC Health Plan Pedal Pittsburgh. It's Pittsburgh's biggest bike ride, and it all goes to support a fantastic local nonprofit, Bike Pittsburgh. The party kicks off Sunday, August 25th. You can choose from 4 different routes for all different fitness levels, from a low-key river loop to a full-on epic endurance challenge. It all ends with a festival in Allegheny Commons Park with food, drinks, DJs, and even a photo booth so you can capture your post-ride glow. Register now for Bike Pittsburgh's biggest fundraiser of the year at pedalpgh.org. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. Not long ago, scientists made a discovery in Pennsylvania. They found a ton of lithium in wastewater created from fracking. Enough, in fact, to meet 40% of our whole country's needs. On the surface, it sounds like it could be a win, given lithium's importance for clean energy. But things always get complicated when fracking is part of the picture. Today, we're with an environmental reporter to talk about what we know and the pros and cons of what could come next. It's Wednesday, July 24th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with Kylie Bentz, a reporter at Inside Climate News. Welcome to CityCast Pittsburgh.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
We're so happy to have you. A big-ish, sort of complicated topic we're trying to digest today. I guess first and foremost, what is this material? What is lithium?
So lithium is a naturally occurring mineral that exists deep underground. It's a really important element for making different types of batteries, including lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, that's what I feel like I've mostly heard about, especially at the airport. They always ask you if you have lithium batteries.
Yes, so it's a major and really important component of batteries, and it's especially important for the clean energy transition. So in technologies like electric vehicles, we need lithium to make batteries for those technologies.
Yeah. So, outside of batteries, is it used for anything else that any of us might be familiar with?
I believe that one of its other main uses is as a psychological or psychiatric drug. I'm sure it has other uses in industry, but the thing that I'm most familiar with as a climate reporter is its use in clean energy technology.
Yeah. Well, and so Pennsylvania has acknowledged this large deposit of lithium. Where did it come from?
So in talking to the researchers who did this study, which was estimating how much lithium we might be able to extract from fracking wastewater, what the researchers told me is that the lithium in Pennsylvania was deposited by ancient volcanoes millions of years ago that erupted, and the volcanic ash contained lithium, and it was deposited deep underground at the same time that the state's natural gas deposits were being formed.
It feels very dramatic that we discovered something that resulted from volcanoes. Not a word we say a lot in relation to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's crazy to imagine. That was one of my favorite parts of the story, was asking him a bunch of questions about ancient volcanoes.
Yeah, did you learn anything fascinating that you think people should know?
I mean, just that this area and all parts of the United States have undergone so many huge geological changes over time. And those geological changes have left us with the energy extraction situation that we have today.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's get into the modern era, I guess. How did this lithium get into our fracking wastewater? It seems like a heck of a transition.
Yeah, I mean, so basically when a fracking well is drilled, water comes up from deep underground when they drill the well. And that water contains elements that exist underground, including lithium. So it's basically a byproduct of the fracking process.
So if it's been a byproduct, why haven't we known about it before?
I think that researchers have long known that there's lithium in this water.
Just not this much?
Just not this much. This was a study that was groundbreaking because it was showing the volume of lithium, specifically in Pennsylvania's wastewater.
So is there a way then to take the lithium out of the wastewater?
Yes. So there's one company in Pennsylvania, just one, that is doing this so far. They're called Eureka Resources, and they say they have successfully extracted lithium from fracking wastewater at one of their facilities. It's a really complicated process, and their process is also patented, so we don't know a lot of the, specifics or the details about that.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you'd gotten to see it or talk to anybody about it yet.
No, I haven't. But it will be interesting to see how that technology develops and if other companies are going to jump in and, try to extract lithium themselves.
Yeah. I mean, did they say how much it costs, like whether they needed a lot of people to do it? Like, I'm wondering if this is a thing that one company will be the niche master of, or if even that one is just going to back off and be like, you know what, maybe not.
I mean, I think that in order to extract the amount of lithium that the researchers say is there, there would need to be multiple companies because it's such a huge amount of lithium. And also the state produces a huge amount of fracking wastewater. And processing it is a complicated task, regardless of whether you're taking lithium out of it or not. I think that when in 2003 or 2023, when Eureka Resources announced that they had extracted this lithium, they said it would take up to 2 years for them to move this process to their 2 other facilities in the state. So it seems to be a pretty complicated, time-consuming, expensive process right now. We don't know a lot about how commercially or economically viable this will be on a large scale.
So even the one company that says they know how to do it, it's still going to take a minute for them to get it to their other facilities.
Right.
That is pretty telling, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that suggests that it is not an easy thing to pull off.
No doubt. Well, I mean, let's jump way ahead, I guess. If we're able to extract it, if it is, cost effective, that sort of thing, what could it be used for or replace if we were able to get access to it?
The main thing that the researchers want, or the reason they were looking at this, is because lithium has an insecure supply chain. So we get a lot of our lithium from abroad, from foreign imports, from places like China, from Argentina, from Chile. And with the Inflation Reduction Act and this push towards the clean energy transition, there's also a push to source the materials for that transition domestically, to not rely on foreign imports for such an important material. So basically, it would replace foreign lithium in our technologies that we need lithium-ion batteries for, like electric vehicles, for example.
Yeah, I mean, is that something that, Pennsylvania is excited about being on the forefront of, or is it more like anxiety and pressure?
I mean, I think there's a lot of excitement about this study, particularly from the oil and gas industry, which makes sense because, to them, it's another benefit of fracking and of their industry. It's a place they could expand and potentially, make money from a waste product of the industry.
True,
and also
yeah.
Politicians in Pennsylvania on both sides of the aisle are pretty excited about this. Republican politicians have kind of come out and said, well, this shows that we were right to invest in fracking and to keep investing in fracking. We should do more fracking. This is a reason to expand fracking. And Democratic politicians who in Pennsylvania on these issues tend to be pretty moderate and to not be outright against fracking. They say, oh, well, this kind of lets us have this all of the above energy strategy, which is something you'll hear from Democratic politicians in the state where, we're going to keep doing fossil fuel production while also working on transitioning to clean energy.
I mean, is that working? Is that a strategy that actually can pay off long term? Can it exist? Can both things exist at the same time?
I mean, they can and do exist at the same time. That is something that is happening now. But as far as Pennsylvania is very far behind in the switch to renewables and clean energy compared to other states.
Is that just because of like our Appalachian, bona fides? Like we are still kind of in what a lot of people would consider coal country, that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, it's partly to do with that, but it's not just that. Texas, for example, is one of the country's leaders in renewables and clean energy. And they obviously have a very strong and powerful oil and gas industry. So I don't think it's just that.
So what's holding us back then?
I mean, I think that's a really complicated question. I wish I personally knew the answer. I think it really has to do with politics and with the divisions in the state. I think it's largely because of how purple Pennsylvania is and the fact that our state government has been divided for a really long time.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast. The best way to learn a language is immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. That's how I learned French as a kid. But if that's not in the cards for you this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. I live in a city with a huge immigrant population. You probably do too. And in my hometown, a lot of my new neighbors speak Spanish as a first language, and we have lots of great Mexican and Central American and South American restaurants and stores. I wanted to be able to communicate just a little bit better with some of my neighbors. So I started with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. And after just a few extremely enjoyable weeks learning Spanish with Babbel, I've already gotten comfortable ordering at a restaurant and eavesdropping on my girlfriend's conversations with her mom. Look, learning a language isn't always easy, but with Babbel it is fun and it feels useful, basically immediately. That's why Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
The YWCA Greater Pittsburgh Equity Awards seeks to honor leaders, especially women of color, who advocate for and advance the organization's mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. Equity Awards nominations are open now through July 31st. Learn more about award categories and submit a nomination at ywcapgh.org/equity-awards. Awardees will be honored on Friday, November 1st, during the Equity Awards luncheon held at the Westin Pittsburgh. Founded in 1867, YWCA Greater Pittsburgh is a member of a nationally recognized movement with a mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. The nonprofit provides direct services, empowerment programming, and advocacy to support individuals and families, especially women and girls of color, while working to challenge structural barriers to equity. Don't miss your chance to submit Equity Awards nominations now at ywcapgh.org/equity-awards to honor a leader in our community. Well, so that was, I guess, the industry folks, the politicians. How do environmentalists feel about all of this? Is it a good thing? Is it we're still trying to decide thing?
So most of the environmentalists and particularly anti-fracking activists that I talked to about this are really skeptical. Like the researchers, they kind of say that we are producing huge amounts of this wastewater every year. We might as well get something beneficial out of it at the same time. But on the other hand, they're really wary and skeptical of the idea that the state is going to be able to regulate another industry when these activists say that the state is already falling short on its task to regulate the oil and gas industry as it exists now. And the other key piece of this is that fracking wastewater is really toxic. It's often radioactive. It can be harmful to the environment and public health. And just because you took lithium out of it doesn't mean that it's now safe. You still have to find something to do with the rest of the water.
And what is happening with all of the water that we generate across the state right now?
So most of it is sent to Ohio and to other places.
We're sending our waste to Ohio. That just sounds like
Yes.
a very Pennsylvania thing to do.
That's exactly what's happening. A lot of it is sent to Ohio, where it is injected in injection wells, which are deep underground, basically just to like get rid of it forever because it's very toxic. But there are a lot of problems with injection wells. They can leak. They've also been linked to causing earthquakes.
Yeah. That's ringing a bell now. So I guess who decides what happens next? And I guess does the federal government have to get involved at some point?
I mean, I think that it's really going to depend on the industry and what companies try to make a go of making this profitable. The government will be involved in regulating it in some fashion.
The state or the feds?
The state government. So the Department of Environmental Protection will be tasked with overseeing this industry in some way because they regulate the oil and gas industry within Pennsylvania. But Eureka Resources, that one company I mentioned, that's the one company that's done this so far. At the end of last year, at the end of 2023, a bunch of their former employees did a press conference and they accused the company of creating unsafe work practices, harming the environment, and they even wanted a criminal investigation of the company.
Is that happening?
I haven't heard any updates since December, so I don't know if it's moving forward, but I do know that there were some state representatives that were supporting the employees and kind of calling on the DEP, to look into what's happening at that company.
So right now, this is a state DEP thing as opposed to a U.S. EPA thing. So many acronyms. If anything does proceed, what impact do you imagine it might have on Western Pennsylvania? Is it, like, I guess in terms of the environmental concerns or effect?
Sure. I mean, the main thing is that most of the state's fracking wells and a lot of the state's natural gas deposits are in southwestern and the western part of the state.
And our county executive was very outspoken supporter of fracking. He championed it being able to be done in county parks, for example.
Yes, I remember that. So it's also that the political situation in Western Pennsylvania, I think, like we said at the top, like it tends to be very moderate and or pro-fracking in both parties. Like there's very few candidates of any party who are willing to just be completely anti-fracking in Pennsylvania. And in Western Pennsylvania, I think that's even more true. And then again, like I was saying, like most of the negative impacts of fracking, or a lot of the negative impacts of fracking, happen in western and southwestern Pennsylvania because that's where a lot of the drilling has happened. And so if they were going to expand fracking as a way to get more lithium, that would affect the western part of the state heavily. It can cause air pollution. It can cause water pollution. There's some parts of the state where water contamination caused by fracking more than 15 years ago means that people still don't have access to clean running water in their homes. And so it can really cause like long-term serious consequences. Some of the experts that I talked to about this they're very cautious about the idea of like a lithium rush. In the past, Pennsylvania has had a coal rush. We've had an oil rush. Like we've kind of been at the forefront of a lot of different energy stampedes, if you will.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fears about, sort of stampeding toward lithium and not really thinking through what the long-term effects might be.
I feel like I personally experienced the fracking rush. So yeah,
yes, exactly.
It's interesting in the modern era what that can look like. Just having so many more people living in your area, and they have money to spend because the oil and gas industry pays usually quite well. It creates a very interesting vibe in like cities and areas across Western Pennsylvania.
Right. I mean, and I think it's really important to look at the fracking boom that started about 20 years ago now in Pennsylvania and how that was talked about at the beginning in very glowing, laudatory terms. There's no downsides. It's going to help us reduce our climate impact. It's cleaner than coal. It was often called a bridge fuel. President Obama famously talked about why fracking was important. It was a bipartisan push. And there wasn't a lot of thought about what might be some of those long-term legacy impacts that could affect us 20 years on, 50 years on, 100 years on, just like coal mining is still affecting many parts of the state today.
So what kind of legacy are you imagining maybe? Or I guess what kind does the research suggest?
This study, it's not saying that if we just keep fracking at the level it's happening right now, Like, it's basically saying we need to drill more wells in order to get more water. So in order to get the lithium, you need more wastewater. And a typical fracking well runs out of water or stops producing that water from deep underground. About 2 years in, loses 80% of its water production. And so to keep getting the same amount of water, you need to keep fracking.
And not just fracking, but fracking in new places. I guess, are there any parts of Pennsylvania that seem maybe poised for that, like another big drilling boom, or maybe where people are still experiencing one?
I mean, I know that in northeastern Pennsylvania, so when I spoke earlier about those people who haven't had water for 15 years, have you ever heard of the town of Dimmock?
Not off the top of my head, but I read a lot of news, unfortunately.
Oh, well, that's okay. So Dimmock is a town famously like at the beginning of Pennsylvania's fracking boom, where you saw these videos of people lighting their tap water on fire.
That I've seen. Okay.
There was so much methane in the water, basically. That was in Dimmock. And those people, a lot of them still don't have clean running water. That was 15 years ago that their water was contaminated by fracking. And I think it was 2 years ago, 2022, there was a settlement reached with the fracking company that caused the contamination. Basically, the compromise was that they were going to build a public water line. They haven't done that yet. It may take up to 4 years. So in the meantime, those people still have to get water trucked into their homes to bathe and to drink and to cook with. So basically, like at the same time that the government, the state attorney general, who was then Josh Shapiro, now our governor, made this settlement reached a settlement agreement with the company, the DEP opened up Dimmock and I think it's 9 square miles around the town back up to fracking. So there had been like a moratorium on fracking in that area because of what had happened, and they lifted that ban. And so there's a lot of fracking going on up there because there's a ton of natural gas that the companies would really like to extract.
And Shapiro, of course, now being considered among a top contender for vice president.
Yes, we're definitely watching that closely. If he is chosen as the nominee, I'm sure I'll be writing more about his environmental record. And what happened in Dimmock is something that I think a lot of environmentalists in the state feel very strongly about, and not in a good way.
Well, so what are you going to be watching for next?
I'm going to be watching to see how the industry reacts, to see whether other companies are going to jump into this race. It'll be interesting to see how the technology develops. It may be that there are other ways of extracting it, or ways that are faster. Maybe it becomes less expensive over time. And one of the experts that I talked about said that right now, lithium is really important for clean energy technologies, but that may not always be the case. There's other types of batteries that are being developed, like sodium-ion batteries. They aren't as good as lithium batteries right now, but there's potential for other types of technology in the future that wouldn't need lithium.
Is there a timeline that you're imagining, or someone has maybe floated, for when all of this could start to shake out?
I think it's very unclear. We're very much early days. Everybody that I talked to was like, this is just the beginning. We still have a lot more research to do. There's a lot we don't know. It's really a lot of question marks.
Yeah. Well, we will come back to you with lots of questions in the future. Kylie Bentz is a reporter for Inside Climate News. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're liking the show, please tell someone, rate us, leave us a nice review, and of course, make sure you're subscribed to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, I call my beat fossil fuels and sadness.